Welcome to the All the Stuff podcast, where we jam about money, clutter, and food, and the real stuff under this stuff. Join me, Lisa Carpenter, your resident food coach, along with my co-hosts, money coach Jen Turrell and clutter coach Lisa Sharp, as we help you release what's weighing you down and heal your relationship with food, money, and clutter from the inside out.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Stuff. I'm Lisa Sharp, and with my co-host Jen Turrell and Lisa Carpenter, we are here to talk about all the stuff that we all contend with, whether it is food, money, or physical stuff, or children. So today I want to talk about fear and how fear keeps us stuck in all these different facets of our life, because we tend to stick with things that we know, even though for fear of stepping out and doing something that's different, even if we're in situations that are making us really unhappy and miserable. And what does fear mean to all of us personally, as well as to our clients? What are some ways that we help our clients get unstuck from being in a fearful place? And I want you guys to share something fearful that you have done sometime recently, something that you kind of went like, I don't really want to do that, but you knew that it was going to push your boundaries and let you grow and evolve as a person.
Video. That's mine.
Video? Okay. All right.
I used to be afraid of video.
Yeah?
Yeah, especially pre-recorded video. So having last summer, Periscope started, and that kind of made me feel like, oh, this is really informal. I can maybe get on here. But it was my fear of looking dumb, fear of not knowing what to say, fear of stuttering, fear of being ineloquent, of saying dumb things, And particularly for pre-recorded videos, I've never done a webinar. I have one scheduled next week. That will be my very first one. And part of it was the formalness of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to have PowerPoint slides. I have to have things prepared. If people expect me to know stuff and be an expert and not just sit and have a conversation. I love one-on-one or one-on-three or small groups. I love just hanging out, talking to people. But presenting, public speaking, those things are hard. And I feel like video is an interesting form of public speaking because you have no idea who's going to watch it. You have no idea what reaction they'll have. You can't gauge what you're going to say next based on people's facial expressions or anything like that. Like, are they getting it? Do they understand? Do they think I'm crazy? So, So I did a 30-day video challenge last month where I posted a video. I filmed and posted a video every day. There were prompts and stuff. And obviously this isn't going into my deep psyche fears because I have plenty of other ones. But I do feel like I have always kind of battled with being visible, which in some ways is weird because I used to be in bands. I was in a lot of bands, but it was much easier for me to play bass than be forefront and sing. I did a lot of the support work. I would book tours. I put out records. I would help people get promotion. I always felt like it was way easier for me to promote other bands than my own. Once I started touring with my husband, it was way easier for me to go collect money for the band that he sang in than when I would tour solo by myself with an acoustic guitar. I had a really hard time asking for money. And all of that kind of came from this being visible, showing up. And personally, I think it goes back to my childhood. I don't know if we want to get super deep into our own psyches and fear, but I did experience abuse as a child, sexual abuse and trauma. And I feel like it made me feel like it's not safe to attract attention to myself. It's not safe to be seen. And that I definitely didn't want attention from certain people, basically strange men. That was kind of something that's been hard to get over, and to realize that it can be safe and it can create a lot of connection. I mean, I wouldn't have met you guys online if I hadn't made a Facebook profile and reached out and gotten into groups. And, a lot of people that are really important to me now, I wouldn't know if I hadn't made steps to overcome that. And I'm still making steps, like trying to do video.
I love this topic. Lisa, I'm all over fear because it's such a big thing. So fear is never really about what the thing is. It's, the way I talk to my clients about it, it's like the tip of the iceberg you see, but you got to get under the water to see really what it's all about. And fear is always grounded in our emotions. But we pay attention to fear because it puts us into this pattern of fight, flight, or freeze. That's how you're going to respond. I personally am a fighter. So when I get very, I don't want to say aggressive because that's not the right word, but a lot of resistance comes back. Like I'll really be pushing back on something. I know that I'm caught up in some sort of fear and I really have to get under it. I totally resonate with your fear of visibility, Jen. That was one of my biggest things to overcome. And now looking back, I'm like, how did I overcome it? Because it was such a big thing for me. I would take failing grades in school over having to stand up and speak in front of the class. And now, I'm streaming live pretty much every single day. My business is grounded in video. My visibility really drives my business. So one of the things that I've had to make peace with about fear is accepting and acknowledging that it's a part of my life and it's always going to be there. So instead of trying to push through it or make it wrong or judge myself on it being there, I kind of link arms with it now. Like fear and doubt, I got fear on one side, I've got doubt on the other, and I take them with me as like trusted wingmen, because if they're in the room with me, I'm pushing the boundaries of something that I don't know. And that's the big thing about fear. It's moving forward and saying, I don't know. This may work. It may not work. I may fall on my face. It may be a huge win. So I don't, it's funny now. Like I don't fear anymore. I acknowledge its role in my life. I acknowledge how important it is. And like I said, I don't take it wrong. I simply just take it along for the ride. And I really, really, and this is what I encourage all of my people to do, is reach out and talk about it. Because if you can work with somebody who's skilled at asking the right questions, so not finding the answers for you, but asking the questions to allow you to get underneath it and find out what it's really about, that's when you can start to release it. So visibility for you, Jen.
We're recording. That's why I didn't answer. Sorry.
I love that. So visibility for you, Jen, actually is grounded in this belief of it's unsafe for me. That's absolutely valid and true. When my clients lose weight, it brings up fear for them because now they're being seen. Now they're being acknowledged in a different way. And they've actually, a lot of them have used their weight to stay hidden. So this is why they struggle to take off the weight, because it's attached to so many more things, right? Everything that brings up fear for us is generally rooted in three things: love, safety, or belonging. If any of those are at risk, our ego is going to do anything it can to protect us, even if on a rational level, we know there's no fear, right? Like there's nothing to be afraid of if you lose weight. Like nothing bad is going to happen. But it's the unconscious, the subconscious part of us. It's like, no, it's not safe, right? The subconscious part of you, Jen, that knows like, it's not safe for me to be visible. This opens me up to potential abuse again. So for me, around the visibility, it was literally like, if people see me, they're going to see all my insecurities. They're going to know that I have no idea what I'm talking about, or somebody will tell me that like, who are you? Sit down, shut up. Because I wasn't really vocal growing up. I was always trying to hide. I always felt like the black sheep. I felt like I didn't fit in. So I learned at a really young age to kind of morph myself to just, shades of gray. Well, what is this group of girls doing? Okay, well, I'll be like them, even though I wasn't really like them. So I didn't know how to be visible and just be me. Like it was really scary to just show up as me and have my opinions and, do the things I do. So I'm much better at it now, but I still have moments where I'm like, oh God, am I really going to do this thing? Am I really going to say this thing? Am I really going to put myself out there in this big of a way? Am I ready for that? And I don't think I'm ever ready for it. But like I said, I kind of take fear along for the ride now. My fear and doubt, my trusted partners in crime. How about you, Lisa?
Well, I want to know, what is something scary that you've done?
Oh, okay. Something that I've done recently. Heading to the Breckenridge retreat that we did with Adrian Dorson, that was scary for me. It brought up a lot of stuff for me. But the first thing that popped into my mind, which has nothing to do with business or anything, was last summer we did, there was this rope sling and we swung out and we could drop into the water. And I was sitting in the boat watching the boys do it. And I thought, if I don't do this, I'm going to go home and I'm going to regret that I didn't have the courage And then I missed out on an opportunity to have fun. So I climbed up there and I held the rope. And from the ground, like from the boat looking up, it didn't look very high. But when I was standing up there, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And it was just kind of one of those moments of, grab the rope and swing, Lisa, and then let go. And obviously it was a kind of a moment for me because I still remember it. And that was the last kind of personal big fear that I overcame. And it was so empowering. It was so empowering afterwards. But every day I'm doing something that scares me a little bit. I know it's cliche, like they say you should do something you're afraid of every day, but even recording these podcasts, right? Like I got off the other day, I'm like, are people really going to want to listen to this? Is anybody going to care what we have to say? Are people just going to be shaking their heads? Because here we are again, launching this new thing, right? I don't even know if there's a podcast out there with 3 co-hosts. I've never even looked, right? But we're doing this thing. We've got this concept, and it's terrifying to see, well, how is it going to be received? But we're going to do it anyways, and whatever. People are either going to love us or going to be like, oh, no, ladies, what were you thinking? So yeah, like currently I would think that this is probably one of my biggest fear moments.
Yeah, I can totally see that. This is, we're recording.
We need to get signs.
And the summer months, right? We're all like, this is real life. We've got kids. I mean, you guys remember that webinar I did when Jake had a full-blown tantrum outside my door, and I was live. I actually had to call my husband during the webinar to say, where are you? And why is our 5-year-old freaking out outside my bedroom door? It was crazy. But I had a lady tell me afterwards, she's like, I bought your program because you were so real. And I knew that that's the type of coach you were, right? So here's this thing that I was, kind of freaking out on the inside, like, what are people going to think? And it really just brought more realness to what I do and who I am. So.
Yeah. And I love that about you. I do think that's, sometimes I will have you in my head, Lisa, when I'm thinking about, like doing something where it needs to be, that's in air quotes there, to be a certain way. And, feeling like I'm going to look like a fraud, feeling like I don't have my own shit together when I'm trying to help people, get theirs together. So, and I think I was just like, Lisa would just show up. and just seeing you do that gives me permission. And then when you by that, then I can turn around and do the same thing for my own people. So it has such a really lovely, positive effect on a lot more than just ourselves. And I think that is it's so important when we're talking about fear to just shine a light on it and talk about it rather than sort of doing the veneer of, oh, everything's fine, everything's great. I'm just, because there's no fulfillment in that. Because it's so superficial, and we don't get to have that feeling of being seen, being heard for who we truly are, because we just are showing people a veneer of everything's fine, and it's never fine.
No, it's never fine. And that's the thing. It's masking so much deep emotion that just needs to be acknowledged. And people are we're afraid to acknowledge our emotions because I know I've had periods in my life where I was like, if I take the lid off of this, oh my God, things are going to blow, or I'm going to have to acknowledge that it's not really fear. I'm horribly sad, or there's things in my life that I really don't like, and I'm going to be swallowed up with depression, or I'm going to not be able to stop crying, or, what will people think? And it was, emotions, we do everything we can to avoid how we're feeling. But in the process of that, we dig ourselves deeper into this kind of fear spiral. We tighten up the resistance even more. And often when we just talk about what those emotions are, like what is under the fear, like if you were to get still and say, okay, fear, what are you trying to tell me? You'll find the answer. You'll hear like, this is about, I'm afraid to be visible. Why am I afraid to be visible? Because I'm afraid it may lead to abuse, whatever it may be for you, but you will find the answers. Even writing about it So if you find that you're in that fight, flight, or freeze state, sit down and get still and just write down, like, what is your fear? One exercise that a coach gave to me once, and I still use it because I'm not a small talker. I like deep conversations. So networking events are like, oh, don't take me there. But I also really love connecting with real people in real time. So I always got anxious before I went. What will people think? Da, da, da. Like, I was all up in my head and insecure. And I had a coach say to me, like, first of all, name your fear. Like, say what it is. Give this, make the thing, right? So, okay, I'm afraid that somebody will judge me. That was what it was for me. And then he said, ask yourself what the worst case scenario that would happen if somebody judged you. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I really wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. They'd talk behind my back. But again, I still wouldn't know that. And then he's like, and what would be the best case scenario? I'm like, I don't know, that I'd meet somebody really awesome, have an amazing conversation and a new BFF. And he's like, and what do you think will probably happen? Oh yeah, I'll probably have a couple good conversations. I'll maybe meet a couple cool people, and I will get on with my life and be no worse for wear. And that has been such a huge help for me anytime that I'm going into some of these situations, is to literally go through the name the fear. What's the worst thing that'll happen? What's the best thing that could happen? And what will probably happen? And then start from there, because it literally takes me out of that fight, flight, or freeze where I'm no good for human consumption. And it allows me into this place of being like, it takes me out of that threatening part of my brain. I think it's called the amygdala. And into this place where I'm like, okay, this is not a big deal, Lisa. Good to go, and then just go. So we're all crazy up here, right? So as much as I coach through this, and I can hold that space for somebody, and I can see what's really getting in their way, I cannot be in my own stuff and on my own stuff at the same time. Yeah, I can't, because when you're in that state of threat or fight, flight, or freeze, you can't rationalize with yourself. And that's why that's such a powerful line of questioning, because it literally brings me out of that space. So if you don't have a coach that you're working with, go through that process and see what comes up for you. Won't kill you.
We didn't get a Lisa Sharp fear yet.
No, we didn't.
Yes.
I'm just soaking in the goodness.
I know, but you're
soaking in the goodness here.
You're doing some big stuff right now.
Yeah, for sure. I would probably say the most fearful thing that I've done recently is I've worked as a professional organizer for the last 3 years. But really I've been coaching for the last 3 years. And because the stuff is not about the stuff. It's not about, like what sort of IKEA system you need to buy for your bedroom and what's the best way to store your cans. I really don't give a crap about, because that's all the superficial stuff. And yeah, I can do that till the cows come home. But what really matters is, like what we're talking about here is like, what is underneath this? Well, I have all of this clutter. Well, what is this clutter really about? Well, I'm really unhappy in my marriage. And so I entertain myself by shopping all of the time. I check out because I'm always on my phone, because it's too painful to be with my son who's a drug addict. And so I just keep buying stuff because it's giving me that feeling of a small amount of joy, of accomplishment, of I'm doing something. And then meanwhile, the house is getting, more and more full of stuff. So it's never about the stuff. It's about the stuff that's under the stuff. And once we get in touch with what that is, then that's when we can change our behavior. Because if it's unexamined, we'll just keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's the difference between motivation and inspiration. If you're like motivated to do something, but there's not really a reason behind it, if there's not really a reason to shift your behavior and your perspective, you're just going to keep doing the same thing. It's human nature. So if you have a deeper understanding of why you are where you are, like I have that same fear about visibility and weight, and it's still something that I work through. I'm still aware of it. It's not like I'm aware of it and boom, I changed everything, but now I can catch that in myself because I know that that's my pattern, because that was something from my own childhood. And so it's something that I can just sort of like, okay, Lisa, check in with myself. Like, why am I really doing this? Oh, it's uncomfortable. I don't like to be seen in this way. I don't like to be, leered at or whatever by men because it creeps me out. There are a lot of different things. And so then I can say to myself, well, how am I taking care of myself? And it's the same thing with our stuff in our homes. It's the same thing with our finances. It's like, this is all about self-care. I'm constantly saying, taking care of your home is self-care 101. It's how you function in the world. It's your resting place. It's your respite. And without examining how you're doing that, you can be moving through life in a really uncomfortable place that you don't have to be in. But until you examine some of that and get under it, we'll just keep kind of doing the same thing. So all of that is to say is that I've been stepping into my coaching role and really calling it what it really is. And I have a lot of hangups around that because both my parents are psychologists. I have this background in social work. I think I need to have a PhD, and I have to have all of this I need to have the paper, that says that you're a coach and you're legit, which of course is nonsense. But there's a part of me that has been really fearful about owning that and about just stepping into who I've always been. It's not like one day I was like, I think I'm going to coach somebody. That's just who I am. Mm-hmm. So stepping out and calling a spade on myself is hard. It's really hard to do that. It's intimidating. It definitely triggers my feelings of insecurities, of not belonging, of people not trusting me because I don't have my piece of paper or whatever. So that's definitely been my biggest thing to do, and in terms of fear. But the thing about fear is it's so empowering. There's nothing more. There's nothing bigger in your life that will make you feel alive and like you are doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing than if you are quaking in your boots and you do it anyway. Because all of those other shades of gray of, I'm going to go a little bit over here. I mean, I'm a big fan of baby steps, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you just have to look it straight in the face and say, fuck you, I'm doing it. And I don't really care what the consequences are. And this is just what needs to happen, because if I don't, I'm going to die in some emotional way, in some sort of way where I'm not speaking what it is I need to be saying, because it's death by 1,000 cuts. So sometimes you just have to do the thing that's really scary and in front of you. So that's it. So that's my fear. And that's definitely stuff that I coach my people on, because the way that their fear will show up is the stuff in their homes. They often will have so much stuff that they have really created a cocoon from their families, from their spouse. My spouse and I can't sleep in the same bed because there's so much crap in the bed. Well, there's a reason for that. There's a disconnect somewhere in the relationship that you are, medicating with stuff. So, I mean, that's just like one of a million different examples that I could give, but it all boils down to the same thing. There's that fear and that disconnect that keeps us from living a more fully passionate and empowered life.
I agree. It's I use this with my clients all the time, that your comfort zone isn't really comfortable at all. It's just familiar. And fear, sometimes we want to turn fear into these big epic events.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be big epic events. Like fear can be about throwing out something that you're letting go of something. You wouldn't necessarily call it fear, but that's what it's kind of attached to. It's what that fear, what it represents. People coming into my practice, there's all sorts of different fears around what they believe they have to give up, the foods they believe they have to eat, how they think their life is going to work. But the truth is, it's looking at, again, what they're using food to medicate, what's really going on for them underneath it, because it's never about the weight. It's never really about the food choices, although these things are important, right? Like Lisa, you would say you still need to declutter. You can't just work on the emotional stuff and keep all the crap in the bed. Like both have to happen, right? Even with your money stuff, you've got to work on your systems and you got to set that up, and you still have to work on your emotional stuff. But
you got to show up for it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right though. It is incredibly empowering when you realize that, you saw this big wall and you thought you couldn't possibly get past it. And then you just start to do the things that you didn't think you could do. And it just starts to fall away, like your 30-day video challenge, right, Jen? I'm sure you have amazing, like now video's no big deal, right? It's like you desensitized yourself to it. So you just have to people just have to get started. That's a huge part.
Mm-hmm. And Jen, what do you hear about fear and your clients? Like, how does that affect people with their money?
Mm-hmm. A lot, especially if there is a lot of debt and not enough income. People are afraid. Yeah, there's a lot of fear because, money's our culturally accepted way of valuing things. And I feel like women in particular apply it to ourselves. So the emotional attachment to debt, in that we think, we're worth less if we owe money or if we aren't making enough. And I think it can really freeze you and keep you in inaction, when the best thing to do is, again, take some action. Start paying it down as much as you can. Get creative, look for new ways to bring in new income, talk to people. Not that you always need to go and admit your financial situation to any old person. I actually don't recommend that because, there are people who prey on people in financial situations. But, talk to people about the fact that you're wanting to earn extra income. Talk to people about the fact that you're starting a new side project or a new business. Or, I think being open and finding people. And then in specific safe areas, that's why I created my Mastering Money Matter group that you guys are in. And, there are places where we can go and actually talk about it. Because I do think, kind of like all of Brene Brown's work on shame, there's fear, there's shame about past actions or inactions or mistakes, or allowing people to push you into certain actions that have turned out badly, all that kind of stuff. And there are moments where being vulnerable about certain parts of it and sharing it with other people who get it and can say, I've been there too, I totally understand. That can be really empowering too, because I feel like places where you have fear and shame tend to really thrive in isolation. So if we don't talk about them, and a lot of times I see financial abuse go along with other kinds of abuse, domestic abuse, or even just, mental manipulation and things like that. So I feel like a lot of women that I talk to, some of the fear and shame goes along with all of that sort of emotional stuff. Like if you had an ex who was really manipulative with money and you feel a lot of guilt about allowing that to happen, and now you and your kids are in a bad situation, there's a lot of self-blame. And yeah, if it stops you from taking positive actions, if it keeps you in inaction, then it isn't good. And a lot of times just getting some clarity, hearing that other people have been through it too, that you're not alone, that can help so much.
That's why I think it's so important that we've each within our respective industries, genres, whatever you want to call it. I know for me, connection and community is hugely important in terms of the work that I do and the growth of my clients. Because I know that when people connect, when they bring themselves out of isolation, when they have the courage to share what's going on for them in a safe environment, that's when they start to heal, because you can no longer believe that you're the only one that doesn't have your shit together. Like you look around and you're like, oh my God, you're my people. You're struggling with the same fears, the same insecurities, the same doubt, the same shame. And it all just kind of melts away. And when it melts away, right, you get yourself out of that fight, flight, or freeze, and you're able to start taking action, even if it's baby steps. And I saw this firsthand when my husband went into rehab, and we got, connected to the addiction recovery community. And I had to get into my own kind of recovery from my codependency and my behaviors, and recognizing like, this was stuff I did not want to talk about because I didn't even want to accept that I was struggling with low self-worth and low self-esteem. And I had levels of shame and guilt because I was just so running my life in a way that it just masked all those things. But in showing up every week within my group and talking about what was going on for me, all the bullshit kind of slipped away. And I was able to create new behaviors for myself. I was able to become more accepting. I was able to let go of the fear of what's going to happen in the future, because fear is always about trying to predict what's coming. I don't worry about what's coming because I trust in myself to be able to take care of it. And I've surrounded myself with community. So this was a huge part of what I wanted to include in my work because I knew how healing it was going to be. I've watched Lisa Sharp do the same thing in hers. And I'm in both of your groups because that's kind of the places where I'm like, oh, my people are in here. Yes. And, I remember one of the first calls I did with Jen with some of the members of the group. And I openly talked about how I felt financially and what was going on for me. And I got like emails behind the scenes from people that were so thankful that I had the courage to share. So although I've had a lot more practice in sharing those vulnerable spots, there's really nothing I won't talk about. There's no area I won't go to. I'm very open. I do that on purpose because I know it gives other people permission to look at the stuff that they've got going on in their lives. And that's so important for me in terms of it paying it forward. Mm-hmm. And it encourages me to continue to stare down the barrel of my own fears and remember that there's bigger things for me on the other side of that. Like if I'm not afraid of something, I need to at least have the courage to get curious about what's waiting for me and why it's worth doing the work. So
mm-hmm. Brilliant. Wow. Thanks, you guys.
Rich conversation today about fear.
I love it.
Lots of nuggets.
Absolutely. And I really want to encourage anyone who's listening, who's sort of thinking like, like we all intuitively know what these things are in our own lives. It's not like we have to scratch really hard to get below the surface here. So the thing is, like, it's a muscle. It's a muscle that you build up. Like every time you're vulnerable, it gets easier. Every time you say your truth, it gets easier. The first handful of times, if you need to go off and throw up in the corner, that's okay. It's, it really does get easier. It's like the visibility thing and doing video over and over again. And next thing you know, you'll look behind you and be like, wow, I climbed that mountain. I'll be damned. I didn't expect that I was going to do that. But it really starts with doing the thing that you just know you need to say or do. And let it be small, let it be known, but do it. I really encourage everyone to shine a light on whatever that thing is. And know we're here for you too. And we're cheering you on.
I would love to have everybody join us in our Facebook group and carry on the conversation about fear and what you're afraid of and what you really want and why you want it, and see what kind of dialogue we can get started within that group. So I think you set up the Facebook page for the podcast for us, Lisa. Do you remember what the name of that would be?
It will be in the show notes.
Good.
And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jen. All right. Thanks, y'all, so much for being here today. Thanks for this wonderful discussion, and we look forward to hearing back from you soon. Come over to the Facebook group, and let's carry on this delicious conversation.
Bye.
Bye.